Okay, so again, this is general biology, Bio131, and we're doing chapter 4, and chapter 4 is about energy and life. We will cover a good part of these topics, okay, including what's the energy, sunlight, photosynthesis, light reactions, and some reactions that we need to know, including the cellular respiration, fermentation, and so on. So the first thing that we need to know is what's the definition of work. Work is capacity to do work. If you didn't do good in the previous exams, you need to start from now. Okay, pay attention, listen, understand, then study. Okay, so if you're doing the same thing and you're not doing good, nothing is going to change. So pay attention. And I did not ask you guys a single question that was not covered. 100%. Everything was covered. So just pay attention. What's the definition of energy? Energy is the capacity to do work. And it's always defined as force by distance, but the definition is important. Capacity to do work. Energy is usually converted from a form to the other. There are different forms of energy that we need to understand. Those two types, two forms I mean, are the potential energy and kinetic energy. I don't know if you heard about that before or not, but we need to understand the difference. Potential energy versus kinetic energy. These are the two types of energy. Potential energy is the energy that you have as a potential to do work. So this is something that's stored. And if you look at this example, if you are here on the top of this sliding game and you start right at this point before you slide, you have potential energy. And then when you actually slide, you're using that energy, and this is called, and you're moving. So while you're moving, this is called kinetic energy. So we have two types. Potential energy, this is the energy that stored, okay? Whether you are on the top of a slide, or if it is food, or anything else, it's stored energy. In this case, potential energy is coming from location, right? Because you are on top here, so this is your potential energy. It can be also coming from structure, like what you have. So when you're moving down, the energy of motion is called kinetic energy. Is that okay so far? Potential energy is what you have as a potential. You didn't use it yet. Potential energy, stored energy. It can be because of location or structure. And then when you slide or when you do work, this is the kinetic energy, which is energy of motion. If we go to living organisms, including humans and anything else, anything that's living, the potential energy, which is the stored energy, is stored in the form of a bond that hold atoms together into a molecule. And this molecule, we talked about it before, which is the ATP. What's ATP means? Adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate. So how do we store the energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate? Here is how it goes. If this is adenine, you add sugar, you call it adenosine. Are we following? Adenine and sugar, adenosine. You add one phosphate, adenosine monophosphate. Another phosphate, adenosine diphosphate. A third one, adenosine triphosphate. Is that clear? The structure. Adenine and sugar. What do you call it? Adenosine. Adenine and sugar, adenosine. One phosphate, mono. Two, di. Three, tri. Where is the energy here? The energy is what's holding these atoms to each other. Meaning, here is the adenosine, right? When you add the phosphate, you're storing energy. And then you're adding the next phosphate, you put energy, you store it in between. And then you add the third one, you put the energy in between. So now within this structure of adenosine triphosphate, it is stored as a bond between these atoms. Is that clear? What's holding the third to the second? Energy. What's holding the second to the first? Energy. Okay? So this is how we store it. And normally, what we do is, we can break this down into all the way to the components, but let me do it this way. Here is adenosine triphosphate, right? And where is the energy? In between the atoms, okay? What's usually happening is, you take out one phosphate, the energy was in between, right? It will be released. And then you use it. Next time when you have extra energy, you put the phosphate and you put the energy in between. So you always rotate, or you always recycle adenosine diphosphate and adenosine triphosphate. Di, tri, right? When you store, you make tri. When you break down the phosphate, release the energy and use it. Now you have adenosine diphosphate plus phosphate. Is that clear? Adenosine diphosphate plus phosphate. Phosphate is broken down. Now I have extra energy. What should I do? You put the energy and add the third phosphate. So this is the storage form of energy, which is ATP. And if you look at this, what is the blue? What do you think this is? Adenine. It's adenine, and this is the sugar, or adenine. I'm sorry, adenosine. And then 1, 2, 3. So what is this? The whole thing? Adenosine triphosphate, ADP, right? How about this? Adenosine diphosphate. And the phosphate is out here. And what's released out? Energy. Okay? The opposite will happen when you have extra energy. So that's why we call ATP the currency, the common energy currency. By the way, it's not the only one, but this is what we're going to focus on. There are other forms, minor forms, but we're focusing on this. Okay, so ATP is the energy currency. You can spend it, right? You work, you get money, and you save it. When you need the money, you spend it, right? So that's what's happening all the time. You get the money and you spend it. You get the money and spend it. You make ATP and you spend the energy. And then you make another ATP and spend energy. The cycle is always going on all the time. Energy can be converted from form to form, but you never lose it. It does not disappear. There's nothing called energy disappears. It just changed from form to form. Okay? So energy can be converted, but cannot be created or destroyed. Okay? This is the energy. You can change it to another form of energy, another energy, another energy. You can change it in different forms, but you never make it from zero, meaning you never create it. And you never destroy, meaning you never lose it. This is a definition of conservation of energy. Okay? So if you look at this picture, here is the chemical energy. Is that chemical energy potential or kinetic energy? Chemical energy, what do you think? Kinetic? It's potential. Chemical energy is the bond. Okay? Chemical energy is the energy that's like in the sugar for this case. And when you break it down and you take the energy out and use it, that will be the kinetic energy. Okay? And here is one thing interesting that always happen. When you break down the potential energy and change it into kinetic energy, automatically you're going to lose some of this energy in the form of heat. It happens automatically. Okay, whether you like it or not, it will happen. It happened for a reason, but you need to understand this. I have potential energy here. Let's say sugar. You're eating sugar, right? There is a potential energy inside the sugar. Okay? Then you're going to break down the sugar and take the energy. Okay? And then you're going to use it. You don't get 10 and spend 10. It doesn't happen like this. You get 10, you spend 9, and one of them is going to change into heat automatically. Any living organism always have this. And it's happening for a reason, because you need to keep the heat of your body all the time. Otherwise, you'll have an issue. If you measure your temperature anytime, you should see it around 37, which is 98.6, isn't it? If it is not, you will say this is something unusual. If it goes up, you say I have fever, right? If it goes down, you say I have hypothermia. It is not supposed to happen. So how? Because you always automatically losing part of your energy when you convert potential energy in the form of kinetic energy and use it. Automatically you're losing part of it in the form of energy, in the form of heat, I'm sorry. Okay? And that's why if you exercise or if you play anything, don't you usually wash your face with water, or you use a fan or something? Don't you notice that your body become warmer? Right? You notice that. If when you play or you do anything, you say it's getting warmer, right? Your body's getting warmer. This is the explanation. Because when you exercise or when you play anything, any sports or anything, you're using kinetic energy now, right? Where did you get that kinetic energy from? From the potential energy. As you're converting, part of it automatically, it's going to be lost in the form of heat. So heat is always produced, whether you like it or not, it's always happening. Okay? So if that's the case, if you think about it, you will say, okay, so every time we convert potential to kinetic, I'm losing part in the form of heat. So how about energy is depleted at certain point? No, it doesn't happen. But the disorder in the system that's happening by conversion into heat, when part of the energy is lost in the form of heat, right? Like 10, you use 9 of them, and 1 is lost. So you have 9. And then 1 is lost, and 1 is lost. If you think about it, what if that accumulated and it lost all the energy? No, it never happened, because you're renewing. You're getting more and more. But generally speaking, we call it entropy. Entropy is the amount of disorder in the system. The disorder is that difference. Are we following? You're using you have 10, but you didn't use the whole 10. That difference will add up, and we call that entropy. But entropy is never going to destroy or finish all the energy, because you're going to renew it. And that's why you never go into a complete disorder, because you lose it in the form of energy and then you gain other energy. Now, what's the source of energy in all life? What do you think the primary source of energy in all this life? Sun. Everything starts from the sun. Okay, if the sun didn't rise for a few days, everybody will die. Starting from the plants. And then everybody will follow. So the primary source is sunlight. Why? Because, did we mention in the beginning, in the conversion of light, that light is not created and not destroyed? Never created, never destroyed. So you have energy, you got it from something, and something got it from something, and something got it from something. But what's the primary source? Did you get it from scratch, from zero? Never. You get it from the sun. So the sun, or the sunlight, is your primary source. Okay? And we call the energy in the sunlight, we call it solar energy. Okay? Solar energy. So this is the primary source of all forms of energy on Earth. Okay? Sunlight, including solar energy. And who is the first that's going to take that sun energy? Plants will take it first, right? So solar energy, every day sun come, or usually if one day something happened, it's unusual, but usually sun come every day, sunrise, and the sunlight contains the solar energy, and the plants are going to take it somehow. You're going to take that solar energy and it's going to convert it into different parts. Just follow with me as we go. Are we following? So the primary source is sun, sunlight. What kind of energy? Solar energy. Who is the first that's going to take that solar energy? Plants. How the plants are going to take it? And the plants will take it from the sun, and then the plants will give it to the animals, will give it to humans, or it give it to the animals and we eat the animals and take it from there, right? But start from the sun. Sun, plants, and then animals, humans, right? Because of that, we call the plants the producers. We call the plants producers. Why? Because they take the sunlight and produce energy that everybody else will use it. So, producers. But is it only plants that are considered a producer? It's not the only one. And what do you notice in the plants? What color is normally the leaves? Green. Why? Because what pigment is in there? What do you call the pigment that make it green? Start with CH. Chlorophyll. The chloroplast contain chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the pigment. Chloroplast is that whole structure. Okay? So it contains chlorophyll. This is the green pigment that make the leaves green, right? And I'm saying leaf, I didn't say the whole plant, because the leaves are the one that's doing the photosynthesis, not the trunk. Okay? The leaves. So what else contain chlorophyll beside the plants? You have another two that you need to know. Algae, some algae are green, isn't it? It's green because they also have chlorophyll. Not only that, but you have some bacteria that contain chlorophyll. So what are producers? Producers are the ones that can make their own energy from sunlight. Producers. Is that okay? Producers can make their own energy from the solar energy from sunlight. Is that okay? Anything else is called consumer. Okay? Can we take the solar light or the solar energy?
No.
We can't. So we are consumers. Animals are consumers. Can the animal do photosynthesis? No, it's a consumer. What are the three producers that you know? Plants, green algae, and some green, it's not green, it's called photosynthetic bacteria. These are the three. What we deal with is plants, and that's why we always remember. But the other two are also important to know. And we call those three producers. Why did they call it producer? They can make their own energy from the solar energy, from sunlight. Okay? Why? Because you have the chlorophyll. You have the chloroplast with the chlorophyll. Here is exactly what's happening. Let's go to the details. So what kind of energy is in the sun? Solar energy. Now the plants will take that solar energy, and it will take carbon dioxide and water. Okay? You get the solar energy from one side, carbon dioxide, and you get the water. So now I have the two components that can help me to make sugar. Carbon dioxide and water. I need to make sugar now. You can't unless you have energy. Okay? So you have to capture that energy in order to mix and build. I have carbon dioxide, I have water, I'm going to put them together to make sugar or glucose. In order to do that, you need the solar energy in order to convert. So carbon dioxide and water plus solar energy, That will give you sugar, and you end up producing oxygen. Okay? Can you tell me where the plants get the carbon dioxide from? From what?
Air.
From the air, right? Don't you breathe out carbon dioxide? They take it. Okay? And where do they get the water? From what?
From the soil.
From the soil, using the roots, right?
I have a question.
Yes.
What about at night?
It's the opposite. We can talk about it, but it's the opposite. We will talk about it. But during sunlight, during sunrise, plants take water through the roots. It will take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. I have the two components that will help me to make sugar. What else do I need beside the components? Solar energy. So I add the solar energy, and now I'm making the sugar. When you make the sugar, you're going to store the energy in the form of bonds between these molecules. So here I have carbon dioxide. Here I have water. Okay? Another carbon dioxide, another water. Another carbon dioxide, another water. Actually, you're supposed to have 6 and 6 to make one sugar. So when all of these mix together and come together and stick together, you have to put energy in between, and now you have the energy stored in the form of chemical energy. So when you say chemical energy, you mean the energy that's in the form of chemical bond. What's a chemical bond? A bond between the different atoms. Is that clear so far? So don't you think, remember that the energy cannot be created and cannot be destroyed, right? But can we convert it?
Yes.
We can. What did you convert now? I converted the solar energy into chemical energy. Is that clear? Okay. So this is the chemical energy in the form of sugar. So is that potential energy or kinetic energy in the sugar? Potential energy. Why? Stored. You know the sugar that we eat? The sugar that we eat. There is energy inside of it, stored in it. Potential energy. What's potential? Why you didn't call it kinetic? Because it's staying there. I didn't use it. Why did you call it kinetic? It's potential. Potential means you can use it. You can. But you didn't use it yet. It's potential.
When do you call it kinetic?
When you use it in a form of motion.
So when the planet is forming it, isn't it?
The plants are forming sugar for itself, not for us.
Yeah.
But we end up eating. The plants can use that sugar. We will talk about this, but the plants also are going to burn the sugar and then they get that energy out to help the plants to grow, to repair, and so on, to do the different functions, to stay alive. Okay? Are we following so far?
So when we are making the sugar, it's kinetic. When we are using it from different sources.
Not exactly. Potential energy is a stored energy that you didn't use yet. Kinetic is when you use the energy to do something. Okay? So, does the sugar contain energy? Yes. What kind of energy? Chemical energy, which is potential energy in the form of bond between the different atoms. And the plants are going to produce oxygen. Isn't that good? Like we're producing carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. The plants actually need the carbon dioxide. It will take it and give us oxygen. Isn't that good? Yes. And then we take the oxygen. The opposite will happen in the plants at nighttime, but it's not our issue for now, and it's not as much. It's not equal. It's not the amount that they make oxygen and carbon dioxide is not equal. They usually say do not have a very big plant in the house because at night time it's going to produce carbon dioxide, which is not our issue for now. We'll talk about it later. But are we following so far? We good? Yeah. Okay. So now I mentioned that the plants are going to capture that energy, which is the solar energy, using their green structure that's called chloroplast. Chloroplast is the machine. Chloroplast is the machine inside the plants that's going to make the photosynthesis. Is it only in the plants? Is that machine only in the plants?
No.
What else? Green algae and photosynthetic bacteria. Okay? Photosynthetic bacteria. All of these three, they can make photosynthesis. And what's a photosynthesis? Synthesis of sugar using photo. Photo means solar energy. Am I being clear so far? Okay. So they contain chloroplasts. Let's talk about the chloroplast a little bit. This structure right here, all of this that you see here, this is the chloroplast. Okay? Color is green. Why is it green? Not because the chloroplast is green, but because the contents inside are green. They contain chlorophyll. Okay? And you see like disc 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you see 5 discs here? 5 green discs. The one disc is called thylakoid. Thylakoid. One disc only. Thylakoid. Okay? If you have a stack, like do you see 5, 5, 5, 5? Each stack is called granum. So the whole thing here is called what? What do you call this whole thing here? This machine? Chloroplast. The chloroplast have 2 membranes. Okay? And what's inside? Thylakoid in the form of granums. Is that clear? Or they call it grana. The plural is grana. Huh? Yes. It was here before and you'll see it again. And so this is what's going to harvest the energy. This is what's going to take the energy from the solar light. These thylakoids and granums is what's going to take it. But did you understand the structure of the chloroplast? Okay, so now when the producers make the chemical energy in the form of sugar, we are going to use it. We're going to consume it. So we are the consumers. Who is a consumer? Anything that eat the plants or anything that cannot do photosynthesis. Anything that cannot photosynthesis is called consumer. Clear? Anything. Even bacteria. Anything that cannot, most of the bacteria. Anything, any living organism that cannot do photosynthesis is considered consumer. Where did you get your energy from? From the producer. In this case, it's the plants. So all of these are consumers.
Natural?
Yes. As long as it's not green, which means that does not have chloroplast. You don't have chloroplast, you cannot make your own. I will consider you a consumer. Are we good so far?
Yeah.
Before moving to the next part, so did we understand the first part? How the chloroplast take the solar energy, and then you will take the carbon dioxide and water and you make sugar. Is that okay so far? Then what? Next part is called cellular respiration. Okay? Cellular respiration is the cells are doing respiration. What do you mean the cells are doing respiration? Means they take the oxygen to burn the sugar and they end up producing carbon dioxide and water. When that happens, I call that cellular respiration. Why are we making cellular respiration? Because I have the chemical energy in the form of sugar. I need to use it. Why did you get it, right? Why are you eating? Aren't you eating to break down the food and get energy out of it, right? Why do you need the energy? The final form of the energy, which is ATP. I need it for all functions. Don't you want to move? Do you want to grow? Do you want to repair? Right? Everything needs energy. Anything that any living organism is doing, including the producer themselves. Are we following? Even the producers, they also do cellular respiration. Or ask yourself how the plants stay alive, how the plants grow. In order to grow, don't you need energy? If you do something to the plants, if you cut like a piece up from the plants, don't you think the plants are going to repair themselves? In order to repair yourself, you have to have energy, right? In order to do anything, you have to have energy. So who is doing the cellular respiration? Any living organism is doing cellular respiration. And what's the cellular respiration? The cells are taking the oxygen, using it to burn sugar and get energy out of it, plus carbon dioxide and water. We call that cellular energy. So like take this as an example, an elephant. This is an animal. He's going to eat plants. The plants contain sugar, and the sugar will go to his cells. The cells are going to break it down using oxygen, and I call that cellular respiration. And you end up producing the energy and use it. Use it in the form of what? Movement, growing, repairing, anything, right? So this is called kinetic energy, when you use your energy. Is it clear what's the difference between potential and kinetic energy now? Now, if you think about it, why does it look green like this? Chlorophyll, which is in the chloroplast. Chlorophyll. Okay? And what's actually happening is, this is what's really happening. When you look at the plant, you see the leaves are green, right? And you think about it, it's because of the chlorophyll. What's the chlorophyll doing? Here is what's happening. You know, the light starts from red to violet, and in between everything else, right? Red and green and yellow and everything in between the violet and the red, right? We know that. This is the light. This is the spectrum, right? So what's happening is the spectrum, the whole spectrum with all of these colors is falling on the plants, okay? And the plant, in this case, we're talking about the leaves. The leaves are going to absorb all these different colors. And because of their color, they're going to reflect the green only. And this is where you see it green. So when you say the color is green, it's not because it's green, it's because this is the only color that was not absorbed. It was actually reflected. Did you understand? So if you ask yourself, what if this is another plant that looks different, that doesn't look green? Yes, you're reflecting another color. So what you're actually seeing is the one that was not absorbed. The whole spectrum fall on the leaves. Most of it, or all of it, is going to be absorbed. The only one that's not absorbed, reflected, is the one that you actually see, which is the green is reflected. That goes with everything. And when the color change, you're talking about the same idea. So what you're seeing is what was not absorbed, what is reflected. Exactly. You're not reflecting the green anymore, right? And that will explain it, as you mentioned, what happened in the fall. Does it stay green? No, you lose. You know what happened? The chlorophyll is over. It's all gone. So now, is there anything that's going to reflect the green for you? No, the green will be absorbed. You don't see it green anymore. Okay? What's going to be reflected at this time is another pigment that they have, but it was not the prominent one. So you're destroying the chlorophyll.
So then after winter, they just restart the cycle?
Yes. You are going to rebuild, the plants are going to rebuild the leaves, rebuild the chloroplast, rebuild the chlorophyll, and then you see the sunlight going, the light spectrum goes and reflect the green, and then you see it green. But did we understand the idea why you see it green? Green is the only one that was not absorbed. This is the one that was reflected, okay? So we will be going around in these different spots, so it's okay, it's repeat, but it will just help you remember the meaning. So look at this plant. This is where the water came from, right? Water. And you're getting the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And this will go to the chloroplast. Chloroplast is going to take sunlight, take the solar energy from the sunlight. And this is what I was talking about. You were asking, but you need to know the different parts. It's here, okay? This whole thing here is called the whole thing, chloroplast. And you have granums. Each granum means like this stack. Granum means a stack of thylakoids. What you call one desk? Thylakoid, one desk, okay? And this is the two membranes, inner membrane, outer membrane, and the inside here is called stroma. Do you remember the cytoplasm? something like this. The inside is called the stroma. The fluid inside is called stroma. Okay? So what are the photosynthesis? What are the plants taking? Water, carbon dioxide, solar energy. And what are you producing? Sugar and oxygen. We refer to the sugar by C6H12O6. Which sugar? We are not going to go through the details. But for now, remember C6, this is the ratio between these atoms. C6H12O6. Can you see this formula? You need to remember this. C6H12O6. 6, 12, 6. It's like 1 to 1, right? 6, 12, 6. This is the ratio. So if, and then what? Like if you say glucose is carbohydrate, fructose is carbohydrate, galactose is carbohydrate. Which one are we talking about? No, we're not talking about the details now. Just remember that it's a 6 carbon molecule. Usually we're talking about glucose in this case. Okay? The glucose is the most common one. Okay, so when we say C6H12O6, you're referring to the carbohydrate or the sugar, and basically we're talking about glucose. This is what we're talking about. Other ones will have a similar formula, but it's not our focus now. So here it is. You see the two membranes, and then you see the stacks, which is called the granum, and you see thylakoids. And then the pigment that I talked about is chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the primary pigment. Do you mean the only pigment? No, the primary pigment. Are we following? Like if you have 3, 4 different types of pigments, 90% is chlorophyll and small amounts of different things. Okay? Are we following? So what happened in the fall is when this old chlorophyll disappears, you're left with a couple pigments, and this is what's going to be reflected. And this is what you see as brown. Sometimes we see nice colors, right? Did you see like these nice colors in the fall? It doesn't have to be brown. Sometimes you see it like orange, right? What you're seeing here is the other small amounts of pigments that's still there after the chlorophyll disappears. Okay? So here it is. It's from blue all the way to violet and green and red, or all of these are the different ranges. All of this is going to be absorbed, and the one that's going to remain is the green, or the green yellow one that's reflected, and this is what gives you the color. Look at this picture here. You see all the spectrum. All of this will be absorbed, and the only one that's not absorbed, reflected, is the green yellow. Okay, so what's the explanation of being green? Reflection. This is the one that was reflected. It was not absorbed. If you think about any plant, it starts as a very small one, and then it's grow, grow, grow. What is the major component here? Okay, so a small plant, a small acorn is going to become a huge oak tree. What is the main bulk of that tree? Like you see a trunk like this. What's the main bulk? Huh? What is it? Sodium? Solar energy? No, I mean the bulk. Like if you decompose and look at the inside of it, what do you have inside? Sugar, cellulose. This is the main part, which is made of carbon. So carbon is the most abundant thing. Okay, like if I ask you which atoms, what is this? What's the structure? It's mainly cellulose. Cellulose is one of the sugars. Okay, carbon, which is carbon based. Okay, so the vast majority of this bulk is carbon in the form of cellulose. All the trees are the same. All of them. You have this cellulose that's making it Anything that's hard is cellulose. So here it is again. This is just detailed. I told you that C6H12O6, right? Where did you get it from? You get 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water. You end up having 1 molecule. Is that clear? I get 6 and 6. 6 carbon dioxide, 6 water to make only 1 sugar, which is in this case glucose. And then you will end up releasing 6 molecules of oxygen. So in order to do the photosynthesis, and again, photosynthesis is the synthesis of sugar from photo, meaning the solar light. In order to do that, you have 2 cycles or 2 stages. The first one is called light reaction. This is the first part. And this is where you take the solar energy, when you absorb it and store it. And the second one is called the Kelvin cycle. Obviously, Kelvin is a scientist who discovered this cycle. Okay, they put their names on it. And the Kelvin cycle is describing how exactly do you make the sugar. Okay, so the first part is you take the light, the solar energy. You take it, we call that light reaction. And then you're going to use it to make sugar. Making the sugar is called Kelvin cycle. And when you combine both of them together, this is photosynthesis. Is that clear? Photosynthesis is 2 stages: light reaction and Kelvin cycle. So I get 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water and some solar energy, and then I make 6 molecules of sugar. Is that clear? Okay. Now, a little bit details. What exactly are you going to do? I'm going to take the water, H2O, right? I will split it, and I get the oxygen on one side and the 2 hydrogen on the other side. Okay? Oxygen, that I take it to one side, this is the one that's going to be released. The hydrogen, I'm going to use it. And I will tell you how are we going to use it. But remember, splitting the water give us hydrogen. Clear? Splitting the water give us oxygen and hydrogen. Oxygen, that will be released. Okay? How about the hydrogen? No, the hydrogen, you have a use for it. Okay? Part of it will be in the sugar, and the other part will help us to make something called NADPH. NADP, and then you can add the H to it. So what's a NADPH? NADPH. NADP is a compound that can carry the hydrogen. If it carry the hydrogen, I call it NADP. NADP what? H. So it is NADP, right? NADP. Split the water. I have hydrogen. Put it in the NADP. Now it's NADPH. Okay? Why are you doing that? Because that NADPH will carry your hydrogen to a next cycles of reactions. Do you know now what's the fate of the water? You split it, oxygen and hydrogen. Oxygen, release. Hydrogen, part of it will go into the structure of the sugar, and the other part will be carried by NADP. Now it's NADPH. Okay? And then when you break down and release the energy, you're going to use it to build ATP out of this. Okay? So the water enter from one side and oxygen from the other side, but the hydrogen stay. We're going to use it. Okay? So here is what's happening. You start with the light reaction. This is where you have NADP and ADP. And when you do the light reaction, you'll end up producing NADPH and ATP. Is that okay? This part, this half? Did you get the light reaction details? What are you going to do in the light reaction? I'm going to absorb the solar energy. What are you going to do with the solar energy? I'm going to use NADP and ADP, split the water with the solar energy, and end up producing ATP and NADPH. Is this part okay? Is it okay? Then what are you going to do with those? I'm going to go to the next cycle, which is Kelvin cycle. NADPH will be used, ATP will be used in the Kelvin cycle to make the sugar. Okay, so we're going to take carbon dioxide and some water and going to go to this Kelvin cycle to make the sugar. So what's the NADPH? What is the NADPH? This is a carrier of the H, or we call it a carrier of the electrons of the H. We call it a electron shuttle. How about the ATP? Energy shuttle. NADPH, electron shuttle, which is carrying your hydrogen including the electron. And ATP is the energy shuttle. Okay? Here is the Kelvin cycle. You're going to take the carbon dioxide, okay, from one side, and you already have NADPH, you already have the ATP, the water, and then you're going to use that to make the energy. So Kelvin cycle is the one that end up making sugar. Photosynthesis is 2 stages. Is that clear? Photosynthesis is 2 stages. Okay? The first part, light reaction, and second part is Kelvin cycle. Light reaction, you end up making NADPH and ATP. Kelvin cycle, you use the carbon dioxide and you use what you got from the first reaction, and you end up making sugar. Kelvin cycle happen in the stroma. So where does the first part happen? Light reaction. In the thylakoids, granums. Okay? How about this? Stroma. What's a stroma? You know these stacks is inside the stroma. The stroma is that liquid inside the chloroplast. Location is important to know. Light reaction, where does it happen? Thylakoids and granum. Is that okay? The green ones. Is that okay? Light reaction. How about the second stage, which is Kelvin cycle? In the stroma. Stroma is that liquid or fluid inside the chloroplast. So where does the mass come from? It comes from carbon. That makes, again, the same question. Where the mass, like you say, it was like this, and it's growing. What is all of this? Carbon. Mainly carbon in the form of cellulose. So obviously light reaction is the one that's going to convert solar energy or light energy into a chemical energy, and Kelvin cycle is the one that's going to use these molecules or use the products of the light reaction to make sugar. Both of those are happening here, okay, in the leaves. If you look a little bit closer, this is your what's all of this? Chloroplast. What is this space? Stroma. And this is a stack called granum. One of those is called thylakoids. So I'm going to take one of these thylakoids, one disc, and magnify it here. If that's the case, you will see 2 membranes, just like the membranes of the cells, and you will have this, which is the photosystem. Photosystem is this purple thing, which contain chlorophyll molecules, the one that give it the color of green, and it contains protein. So if you look inside, show me that disc from inside. What is that disc? That disc is chlorophyll. I'm looking at the thylakoid now. One disc. What is this? Chlorophyll, which is the green one, and a protein. Protein in which we have these chlorophylls. And this is within the membrane of the disc, which is called the thylakoid. So this, if you're comparing light system players, you have the sunlight, I have the water, I have the chlorophyll, ADP, ATP, NADPH, and NADP, and the products are energy in the form of ATP. You have NADPH that's going to shuttle the electron. You end up producing oxygen and ATP. So if you look closer, this is what you're going to see. It's just putting everything together. Start from here. You have the water, split the water, oxygen goes out, and the hydrogen is going to go to the NADP. Okay? And here is the electron. The electron is going to be activated. This is the details. Are we following? Get the water, split it. Okay? I have oxygen and hydrogen. Oxygen out. Go to the atmosphere. How about the hydrogen? The hydrogen is carrying electrons. These electrons are in a ground state, like it doesn't have energy. Okay? And then when the sunlight comes and the solar energy are going to activate these electrons, and now it is going to be in an excited state. This is the details. How did you use the solar energy? So in previous slides, I was just saying, generally speaking, right? Thylakoids take the solar energy and make NAD, pH, and ATP. Didn't I say that? How exactly do you do that? This is the details now. Okay? How? You take the electron in the ground state and you activate that. It becomes excited. When it is excited, it's going to go to the electron transport chain, and the electrons are going to be moving in and out, moving in a chain of reactions that you end up making ATP. Okay? And here it is again. You're making that cycle again from the energy that's coming from the sunlight, and you end up having the NAD pH from one side and the ATP from one side that goes to the Kelvin cycle to make sugar at the end. Okay, here it is again. Water, split it, oxygen let go, hydrogen containing the electrons, electron transport chain, until you go to the Kelvin cycle. If you look at these and compare those two together, this is a wood, and this one is a carrot. This contains cellulose, and this one contains the sugar. Okay, in this case, it can be starch, which is a series of glucose. So this is a piece of wood. Can you eat a piece of wood? No. Can you eat a carrot? Yes. What's the difference? Both of them contain sugar. This is not edible sugar, which is cellulose. This is edible sugar, which is starch, the starch is glucose. It's a multiple units of glucose. Okay? So here it is again. Kelvin cycle is a cycle that's going to end up producing sugar. Okay? There are different types of sugar. Sugar that we can eat is the one that consists of glucose in the form of starch in this case. And the other one that's not edible in the form of cellulose. And the cellulose is the bulky one that make the structure. Okay, so same thing again, ATP from one side, NADPH from the other side, carbon dioxide from the third side. This is all what the Kelvin cycle needs. Is that clear? And what you end up producing by Kelvin cycle? Sugar. C6, H12, O6. In order to do that, what's your source? ATP, NADPH, and those came from the light reaction in the beginning, right? And you add carbon dioxide to that, put them together, and you end up making sugar. Okay? Now, how exactly are you going to make sugar? Are you going to make sugar just glucose like this? No. Are we following so far? Are we good? So here is a question. So Kelvin cycle is going to take carbon dioxide, NADPH, and ATP to just make sugar, 6 carbon molecule sugar? No. It starts with making this type of sugar. It's called G3P. So this is an intermediate. Okay? in the middle. You make this first, and then you put them together to make glucose. So you need to remember that this 3-carbon molecule, which is G3P, is the product, and then every 2 of them you put them together and you end up producing glucose. So there is an intermediary step. Did you get the idea? You don't just take the ATP, the NADPH, and carbon dioxide, and you end up making glucose. No, you make an intermediate one, okay? Which is the 3-carbon molecule called G3P. So when the plants make glucose, okay, there are different ways to store that glucose. Did you understand the whole idea? Light reaction, right? And then Kelvin cycle, you end up producing glucose, right? What will happen to that glucose? I can convert it to cellulose, and that will make the bulk. Will make this is why the trees are solid like this, because of cellulose. Is that the only thing that you're going to use the glucose for? No, I'm going to use it in other ways. What are the other ways? I can make starch out of it and store it. You know what the plants are doing? The plants are doing starch for themselves. When they need it, they will take it, but we eat it. Okay, we take that starch and eat it. But for the plants, they are not making that for you. They are making that for themselves. They store it in a form of starch. So when you need it, you break it down into glucose and then use it. Do you understand the idea? So what's the product of Kelvin cycle? Glucose. Is that okay? I have a lot of glucose. What I'm going to do with that glucose? Part of it, I will make it cellulose to make the bulk of the tree, of the plant. Okay for this? And that's not edible. How about the rest of the glucose? I'm going to put it together to make starch. So you put it together to make cellulose, and you put it together to make starch. What's the difference? There is a difference.
You go into foods?
Both of them are the same. The only difference is cellulose. Actually, there are 2 differences. Are we following? I have glucose. What am I going to use the glucose for? Kelvin cycle give me glucose. What am I going to use the glucose for? I'm going to put it together in a certain way to make cellulose. I'm going to put it together in another way to make starch. And I'm going to burn part of it to get the energy out. So 3 uses for glucose. Is that clear? So if you ask yourself, what's the difference between cellulose? You're telling me that cellulose and starch, both of them are multiple units of glucose. What's the difference? It's just a different way to build it. Okay? Like this. Glucose, 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 branch. Versus glucose, 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 and then branch. Isn't that different? But we do it the same way, right? Can you get blocks and make a classroom like this? Yes. Can I take this and make a small storage using the same blocks? Yes. It's just a different arrangement, isn't it? Can I make a bathroom? Yes. Just the same blocks, but doing different arrangement. Did you get the idea? So I have the same block, which is glucose. If you put it in a certain way, you make cellulose that's not edible. Or you put it in another way, you make starch that's edible. But what are the components of both of them? What's the building unit for both cellulose and starch? Glucose. It's just arranged in a different way, without going through the details. Okay? So this is the different uses. What's the third use for glucose? So what do you use the glucose for? I make cellulose to make the bulk and make the tree strong. I make starch, which is a storage of food. The third one is I burn part of it to get my own energy. Don't you think the plants need energy too? Anything that's alive will need energy. Otherwise, you will die. Okay? Now, talking a little bit about energy, which is the next part of the cellular, which is called the cellular respiration. So far, we got the sunlight, energy from sunlight, the solar energy, right? And we used it in 2 steps for photosynthesis, and we make glucose out of it. Is that okay so far? what's the fate of the glucose? In the plants, 3 fates that we talked about. Now I'm talking about how can you burn it and you get energy out of it. And this is called the cellular respiration. Okay? The energy that was stored in the form of chemical energy, which is the sugar, we're going to break down the sugar now and release energy out of it. Who is doing the cellular respiration? Any organism, any living organism. Why? Because cellular respiration, when you break down the glucose and you get energy out of it, you don't have energy, you're going to die. So anybody who is living, not anybody, any organism, any living organism, they have to do cellular respiration, including the producers. Yes, of course. Isn't plants are living organisms? Any living organism is going to do this. So what is the cellular respiration? Cellular respiration is different parts, but the part that's called aerobic is the more important part to us. Aerobic. And when you say aerobic, it's coming from air, which means oxygen. Aerobic. So aerobic respiration is air, so using oxygen. So you get the glucose into the cells, and you take oxygen into the cells, and you use the oxygen to burn the glucose. Right? Is that clear? If you wanted to burn something, you know that you have to use oxygen, right? If this is fire and you put something on it, cover it, is it going to fade, right? Why? Because you deprive it from oxygen. So in order to burn something, you have to use oxygen, right? So look at this. This is your cell, or a cell of any living organism. Are we following? Okay. Here is glucose coming. Glucose is a 6 carbon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And oxygen, hydrogen, not my issue. I'm not going through the details now. Just know that glucose is 6 carbon molecules. Is that okay? Now you are in the cytoplasm. You break it down into 3 carbon molecules. These 3 carbon molecules are going to go to the mitochondria. This part is not my issue. This is my issue. In the mitochondria. Okay? What happened in the mitochondria? Inside the mitochondria, you're going to take this 3 carbon molecule and you're going to enter into 2 reactions. And we call that aerobic respiration. Why did we call it aerobic? Because this part in the beginning, in the cytoplasm, it doesn't need oxygen. Mitochondria does not work without oxygen. You have to have oxygen. It will not work. Okay? So this part, did I need oxygen here? In this part in the cytoplasm, we call it anaerobic. But when you go to the mitochondria, you have to have oxygen. We call it aerobic. So my focus now is the mitochondria. You see this structure?
It's going to enter Krebs cycle.
Yeah, it will enter to the Krebs cycle and electron transport chain. But you see this organ here? This is the mitochondria. And this is the one that's going to do the cellular respiration. Okay? It will take sugar and oxygen, and it will end up producing carbon dioxide and water. What else? Are you taking the sugar just to make carbon dioxide and water? Energy. You're taking the energy out, right? What enters? Sugar and oxygen. What leaves? Carbon dioxide and water. So you broke it down. Why? To get the energy out. Okay? So when you breathe, you take the oxygen and you get rid of carbon dioxide. So if you're eating, think about it. Here's what's happening simply. You're eating, the food moves down, right? You break it down, you absorb it. What absorb it means? Means something like glucose go to your blood. Are we following? Eat, absorb, go to the blood, and the blood will take it to the cells. The cells will do this. Okay? So the food that's coming from the digestive system will go to the mitochondria. It will go to the cells, and then will go to the mitochondria. Oxygen will also go to the mitochondria that's coming from the lung. You're going to burn it, and I call that aerobic. So where does aerobic happen? Which part of the cells? Mitochondria. How about the anaerobic? Cytoplasm. So all these systems are working together in order to get the energy out. The respiratory system is working to give you oxygen, get rid of carbon dioxide. The blood is a carrier, and the intestine is giving you the food. Okay? What will happen when I break down this glucose, for example? I will end up producing carbon dioxide and water, and then I will get energy, right? This energy in the form of ATP. Okay? Are we following? So you ended up at the end making ATPs. Why did you burn the sugar? To get energy in the form of what? ATP. Next part is you're going to use that ATP. And did you understand how you're going to use it? Split phosphate, release the energy. Why are you splitting the ATP and using and releasing the energy? To move, to keep myself alive, to repair my cells, to do anything. Anything needs energy. The way we count the energy is calorie, and we say kilocalorie. You know what kilo means? K-I-L-O? 1,000. K-I-L-O means 1,000. So calorie and kilocalorie. Do you read the labels before you eat something? Usually it should say, it gives you the calories here. So it's 220, okay? It's not even a kilocalorie, okay? It goes with the calories. So the calorie is the energy, which is describing the amount of energy that's burned. And here is how can we gain weight and lose weight. When you say, I'm gaining weight, I need to go and diet, right? Or I'm losing weight. How did you gain weight? How did you lose weight? It's always the calorie pool. If you're eating or your input of calories is more than your output, which is your use, you gain weight. If your input is less, you're going to lose weight. Okay? So that's what it is. Simply. I'm eating 2,000. I'm gaining 2,000 calories. And I'm using 1,500. I will gain weight. I'm eating calories, 2,000 calories. And I'm exercising, so I'm using 2,500. You're going to lose weight. Did you get the idea? It's all input and output. Okay? So this is an example. One hamburger will contain more than 500 calories, and this will take you about 2 hours to burn one sandwich only. Versus the chocolate will contain like 220, that will take you an hour of walking. Orange contain only 45. Obviously this is very healthy. The amount of calories is very small. If you just move around like this, you burn it. Okay, and we're going to stop here.